Welcome to another Thursday night Bible study, brought to you as a ministry of SIGBC.
Tonight we're going to be contemplating "Let all that you do be done in love" from 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 1 through 24. Of course, we'll take about 3 weeks to study this particular concept as well. If we contemplate the subject of love, it's easy to think of love as a feeling that we have. And the feeling most often seems to be attached to romantic love or familial love, that emotional attachment that we have with another individual. And that is part of what true love is all about. However, when we talk about loving others, it is just as much an action as it is an emotion. We don't want to say it's only an action, and we don't want to say it's only a feeling. What we would like to observe is that love is both a feeling that always results in an action. So, let all that you do be done in love. God desires in us not just a heart of love, but expressions of love in action and in life. When we are in church for Thanksgiving, we often express thanks publicly for those who serve in the church. And when we do that, we usually give them a gift to recognize their service. And the reality is that we don't spend a lot of money on these gifts because we try to be conservative in what we do financially. And so it's not the amount of money that was spent on the gift. It is the act of giving that tangibly expresses our appreciation. So we have a heart of gratitude, and we publicly recognize the gratitude that we have, and we tangibly express that gratitude through a small, however thoughtful and meaningful gift. And so when we're talking about love that is felt in the heart should always be love that is expressed in action. In the Olympics, there are gold medals, silver medals, and bronze medals. Athletes don't need these medals and would probably run just as hard without them, right? But these medals are tangible expressions of recognition for their achievement. When the Olympics first started, the award that they received was a wreath made of leaves. And this crown that was made of leaves, as soon as the Olympics were over, and no sooner had they received the crown than it would fall apart. And so it wasn't actually the tangible item of the crown that was meaningful. It was the expression of their achievement as recognized by the bestowing of the crown that was meaningful. And so when we love someone or something, and we truly desire to express love, usually that is done in a tangible way. I've often talked about how I love to take my kids, my grandkids. My kids are old enough to not need candy anymore, but I love to take my grandkids. We have 12 of them now here in Seki. And so I love to take my grandkids candy. And I'll usually be careful not to give it to them before supper time and not give them too much of it so that it's bad for their health. But That's one of the ways that I express my affection for my grandchildren. And they don't have to have the candy. They know that I love them. I tell them that I love them. And we do things together. We go camping together. We do all kinds of fun things. And they know that I, from my heart, love them deeply. But still, these tangible expressions are a way to identify the fact that the love is genuine. So, in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, we're going to read, just since we're going to be doing verses 1 through 24, we're not going to read the entire passage. We're just going to do the individual verses from which we are making the observation. So we'll make the observation first, and then we'll read the verse, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So, in the idea of the fact that we are to let all that we do be done in love, the first observation in verses 1 through 3 is that giving is an expression of love. Hence the word for love being charity. The idea of charity automatically conjures the image of benevolence, and benevolence automatically conjures the image of giving. And so giving is an expression of love. Verses 1 through 3 of 1 Corinthians, Paul writes, "Now about the collection for the Lord's people, do what I told the Galatian church to do. On the first day of the week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income, saving it up so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. Then, when I arrive, I will give letters of introduction to the men you approve and send them with your gift to Jerusalem." Now, Paul put in a large amount of time from AD 52 to AD 57 toward the collection of gifts for the famine-stricken and persecuted Christians in Jerusalem. Acts chapter 11, verses 25 through 30 records this, and Romans chapter 15, verse 26 talks about this. Some interesting words that are used in this particular passage about the collection for the Lord's people, and set aside and in keeping with. There are some interesting words that are used by Paul under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit in this passage. Now, what the passage is talking about is the church at Corinth had received the gospel as a result of Paul, who had gone to the city of Antioch, having originated his ministry in Judea, of course originally in Damascus, but basing his ministry in Judea, and then going up to Antioch, and then from Antioch being sent out as a missionary, he had gone to Corinth and developed a wonderful relationship with the people of Corinth. And even though they struggled with materialism, and they struggled with lusts, and they struggled with the true idea of what love is all about, still they had a desire to do what God wanted them to do. And so when they found out that the church in Jerusalem was facing famine, and that a lot of Christians had lost their employment and were suffering persecution, they said, we want to do something for them. We want to take up a collection and send the aid to the church at Jerusalem. Now, this was a natural desire that came from their love for God and their appreciation for the impact that the church in Jerusalem had had in an indirect way through Paul. And so they desired to take up a collection to help with the needs of those who were famine-stricken in Jerusalem. But they hadn't done it. And so now here, Paul is beginning the chapter by giving them instructions on how they should go ahead and fulfill the promise that they had made to give towards the needs of the church at Jerusalem. And so he says now about the collection for the Lord's people, do what I told the Galatian church to do. On the first day of every week, each of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income, saving it up so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. In other words, Paul is saying, hey, you're the ones that said you wanted to do this. So I know it's going to be difficult, and it's easier to have a savings plan than it is to all of a sudden be asked to give a large sum of money. So if every week you save a little bit of money, by the time I get there, you'll have enough collected so that I won't have to have any fundraisers. And so he talks about the idea of on the first day of the week, each of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income, so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. The word for collection in the Greek is logia, and it's the word for gathering or contribution. And then he says, I want you to set aside a sum of money. And the word set aside means to gather or to heap up. Today I was taking the tree limbs and branches and actual trees that we had cut at the Sakahogi Church, the new property at the Sakahogi Church. We're getting ready to work on the land that we purchased for a grave site. And so we had cut some trees during our work day, and so we put them in the truck and took them up to the campsite, and I was saving some of it for firewood, and some of it I was burning in the pile. And while I was at it, I decided I was going to gather up all of the grass and things that were cut. And so I took the rake and I went around the whole area, raking in and gathering up into a pile the leaves and weeds that had been cut previously so that I could put it on the burn pile. And it's that idea of gathering into a pile, which is the word that is for set aside, thesarizo. And it means to accumulate the funds necessary to give. And then the third word, of course, is eudo, which means to cause to prosper or to be successful. Give as God has prospered you, as God has given you success. In the same amount of giving should not be based upon something that is forced, but as a sign of appreciation for the way God has blessed you, you set aside a portion of that. See, God isn't saying, hey, you go ahead and plan on giving and then I'll give you money to make that pledge. No, he's saying, look, I've already blessed you. So some of the funds that I've given to you, be generous in keeping with the amount that you have. So rich people give more, poor people give less, but it's in keeping with what they have been blessed with. So the reality is, it could be referring to grain offerings. So possible that first day of the week could refer to Wave Sheaf Sunday, which was the day after the Sabbath, during the days of unleavened bread. The first ripe barley harvest began during the days of unleavened bread, and harvesting continued for 50 days, and finishing with the wheat harvest before Pentecost. And so perhaps Paul wanted the people in Corinth to begin to store up grain beginning on the first day of the spring harvest, which was Wave Sheaf Sunday, and to have it ready so that when he got there, he could leave with it. And that's one idea of what he meant by setting things aside as God has blessed you. If you have a large garden, give more. If you have a small garden, give less. Whatever it is that Paul is talking about, the collection for the Lord's people, and I know that most people believe that it was money, And I think that the reality is it probably had a lot to do with money. But it doesn't matter if there's a famine, then it's really doesn't matter how much money you have if there's nothing to buy with the money. And so it's possible that this is talking about the grain that they were able to collect and send with him to the church at Jerusalem. Whatever the case may be, the idea is that giving is an expression of love. Love for God, love for our fellow man. And so, that's the first point under the theme of let all that you do be done in love. Let's remember that what we do is an expression of love, just as much as the feeling that we have in our hearts or the words that we say.
Thank you for listening. You can also join us in person or live on Facebook every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Japan time. This has been a ministry of Sakahogi International Grace Baptist Church.